Hi friends, I am going to finish wrapping up my, what are we on? March reading. I will link below. I did my middle grade wrap up already. I did that on Monday, mainly because I read a lot this month. I can't believe how much I read. Part of it was because I was finishing up some books for the booktube prize. And also, did I listen to a lot of audiobooks? I think I did. If you're new around here, I'm Michelle and welcome to my channel. I have been, in March, I decided that I was going to move from the house that I've been in for 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And March was kind of my month of searching for an apartment, which is hard. When you work in education, you're single income and you live in a big city like Atlanta, that's pretty expensive. So it did take me a little while to. The other thing is, when you have a big dog, Mabel is almost 50 pounds. She's not quite 50 pounds, but yeah, that was a big thing too. Like a lot of places only wanted 20-pound dogs, which my beagles were bigger than that anyway. Anyway, point being, March was stressful. And I do have a place, so that's great. I'm very excited about it. I have been packing, which has increased the number of audiobooks that I'm consuming. I don't know that it impact. It did impact a little bit. Yeah, it did. Let's be real, it did. Okay, so I typically do either a mid-month wrap-up, or I was trying to get to updating my reading every Friday. That did not happen in March for the reasons I just mentioned. I did vlog at the beginning of the month, and so I will link that below. There are some books that I read that were more in-depth reviews in those videos. For the booktube prize, I cannot tell you my thoughts about it yet. All I can tell you is that I read it. The Rebels Clinic by Adam Schatz is about France Fanon. I've heard it different ways. That I did read physically, but I had to take it back to the library. And then also for the booktube prize, I read The Hardy Women by Paula Byrne. This one I listened to on audio. And then I did talk about the middle grade in that middle grade vlog. The first one that I haven't really talked about is, did not organize these very well. So I was also doing the Irish Readathon, and for the Irish Readathon, I tried to read Bright Eye Burn by Molly Atkin. This is set in the 1200s. I just couldn't get into it. And I think it was timing for me, mainly. Like my brain just couldn't wrap around it. I tried this at the beginning of the month. I was reading a lot of nonfiction for the booktube prize, and this required some attention I didn't have to give it. So that's, like, I'm not writing off this author. I don't always enjoy reading things from, I don't know, pre 1700, 1800. it reminds me too much of things I had to read in my English Lit degree that I hated. Which, like the Canterbury Tales and Beowulf and all those things that I did not enjoy. Anyway, so this is a new book. It just came out in 2024. It's about a daughter of a wealthy innkeeper who watches her mother wither under the constraints of family responsibilities. She finds her mother killed in a field, and she kind of knows who did it. And she has a lot of dreams. And yeah, that's all I can really say because that's all I really read. But if it sounds like something you want to read, I did like the writing style. I just couldn't get into it too much. And like I said, I think it was a me thing. Then I read The Scapegoat, The Brilliant Brief Life of the Duke of Buckingham by Lucy Hughes Hallett. This is for the BookTube prize. Yeah, I will say, it's a newer release, and it took a little bit of time to get the physical copy. So I had ended up purchasing an audio copy on Libro FM, and I did listen to it on audiobook, most of it. But it was also helpful to have the hardback, the brick. So anyway, that was for the BookTube prize. I also read for the BookTube prize. These books were heavy. Vanishing Treasures by Catherine Rundell. I think that was all for that. I also did a buddy read with Melinda at A Web of Stories. We read Here on Earth by Alice Hoffman, and this was a retelling of Wuthering Heights, which I could not remember from the beginning. I didn't feel like I remembered Wuthering Heights much at all. I think I read it in high school, maybe college. Melinda remembered it a lot better than I did, and she could make the connections with the people in the book better than I could. I did start to remember parts of it as I was reading Here on Earth. Not so much the details and the side characters, but I did remember parts of it. I didn't really enjoy this book that much. I enjoyed the experience of reading it with Melinda. I do enjoy a buddy read. Even when it's not a great book, I enjoy it. This just, I don't mind an unlikable character, but I think I do need someone to root for. And I did sort of root for the daughter, Gwen. So March is the mom, Gwen's the daughter. March grew up in this town. She goes back to the town when, like, her nanny passes away. And while they're in the town, March knows that she'll run into her old boyfriend. And I was not a fan. Not a fan of Hollis, which I don't really think you're supposed to be, because it's definitely the Heathcliff character. But I really didn't like him. I didn't really care for March either. There's another character named Hank, who is Hollis's, I don't know, foster. I don't even know. Hollis raised him, but he's not his son. And that whole story about how he ended up with Hollis, there was just a lot that I didn't like. And I looked back on GoodReads to see, did I ever even like Wuthering Heights? And I gave it 4 stars. Why did I give it 4 stars? So at some point, I'm going to go back and read it because I actually did find my copy. I had 2 copies. I remember having like a little mass market paperback. I must have gotten rid of that one, but I did find a different copy as I've been packing. So at some point, maybe I'll reread it and change my opinion of Here on Earth. But I've already put it in my Pango shop, and we'll see if someone else. And the other thing was that there was all this buildup to something happening at the end, and I just felt like the ending was pretty flat for me, which I think Melinda felt the same way. So take that for what it is. I read 2 books that are on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. I read Fundamentally by Nusaba Yunus. This is about a woman who has done research on Nadia, that's her name. She's a PhD, and she's done research on rehabilitating, what was it they called? They had different words for it. Rehabilitating, de-radicalizing was another word they used in here. ISIS brides or widows. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a serious novel. And then I look and see Dolly Alderton, who writes funny books, said it's funny, gripping, and compassionate. So I wasn't really sure what I was in for. And I mean, you have a woman blowing a bubble with gum on the front cover. So when I got this from the library, I just thought, I'm just not sure. It's about Nadia, who is going through a breakup, and she ends up taking this assignment job to start her rehabilitation program in Iraq. The brides or widows are kept in a camp. I think it's supposed to be like a holding camp or refugee camp. Some of them have children, and we hear some of the stories of the women, and they go through these classes, and they're basically trying to, quote, rehabilitate these women. Some of them were trafficked into ISIS. Some of them went willingly. But they're trying to get the women to not hold the beliefs of ISIS so that they can go back to their original countries, for the ones that are from different countries. For the ones who are from local communities, there's another person who's kind of working to get them accepted back into their communities. So there's a lot about that, but there's a funny side of it, but there's also there's definitely humor in it, in the story. I'm still kind of processing this one because it's a very serious topic, and a lot of what these women went through was very serious, sometimes violent attacks, being kidnapped basically, and seeing death all around them. It's a lot of what they went through. We also see Nadia and her team getting drunk a lot, and I think the humor was more on the side of the people who are running the camp, but then there'd be serious consequences. So I'm still just not sure how I feel about this book. I gave it a 3-star. I really like the writing, and maybe that's the feeling you're supposed to leave the book with, is just kind of an unsettled feeling, because on the surface, you know it's going to be very serious topics, but there's also the humor, which can show the human side of it, as well as the coping skills that a lot of these women seem to be putting in place to deal with these horrific things. I don't know if I'm putting this all in very good words, but anyway, that's kind of how I feel about that. Who would I recommend this to? If you like unsettling books, if you like kind of that humoristic side woven into a very serious topic, you know, I actually do think this has similarities to The Bandit Queens by Perini Schroff, which I loved. So, I mean, yeah, I'm still gonna leave. I'm still at a 3-star for this. But yeah, if you liked The Bandit Queens, I think that's probably a good connection to this. But okay, enough about that one. I also read Crooked Seeds by Karen Jennings. This is also on the Women's Prize for Fiction long list. This is about Deidre. Deidre is a woman who's living in kind of a communal housing complex after the government has taken her and her whole neighborhood's housing to build something, and promised them money for it, which I don't know that they ever get. It takes place in South Africa, and it's a really hard book to read. Now, I did know going into this, one of my friends had told me that it's gross. And if you are squeamish about bodily fluids, you may not like this book. I'm just going to leave it at that. But it's about Deidre, and she is approached by the police, who say that they have found human remains, in the backyard of the house where she lived with her family, and the house that the government took. And she is obviously very confused, and she kind of goes through trying to make sense of it in her mind and thinking, okay, well, maybe it was the family that lived there before us. And then she also has a daughter who has moved to, I don't remember where her daughter moved to. I want to say UK somewhere. And it gets very mysterious, confusing, but in a way that it's supposed to be confusing. It's confusing for Deidre. As she's trying to figure out what's going on, her older brother was kind of the golden child, and her mom is currently in a nursing home with memory issues. And so yeah, it's a story about Deidre trying to make sense of all of it and trying to figure out what is going on and what could be happening with these bones that they're finding. I don't want to say more because I think going into it confused is kind of the purpose, and would be an important part to the process of reading this. It's definitely literary fiction. I would say, who would I recommend this to? If you're a fan of literary fiction and you're okay not knowing what really is happening, and again, if you're okay with bodily fluids, definitely try and check it out. It is a short book, and that's kind of one of the things. I rated it a 4-star because while it was definitely gross in parts, the writing was really amazing, and how confused it made me, but it was also like, I read this in less than 24 hours. It's a short book, but also I wanted to know what the heck is going on. So yeah, it's a good book. I hope this one's shortlisted, but I've only read 2 so far. So yeah. Anyway, I read for the Irish Readathon. I read What White People Can Do Next from Allyship to Coalition by Emma Dobry. Emma Dobry is an Irish author. I read this for 2 prompts. One is a cover with green on it. And one of the prompts was to read a past prompt, and that was nonfiction. So this was nonfiction. Very short. I did tab it. I do sometimes tab library books if there's something I want to write in my notebook out of it, or if it's something that I want to go back to read it again before I take it back to the library. Don't worry, I take the tabs off. This one is basically Emma's response to, this happened after, or she wrote this after COVID had started and George Floyd was murdered, and it was basically a response to, or an expansion on an essay she had written. She kept getting this question from white people: what can I do? What can I do to be an ally? And so she goes into what it means to be an ally. What is allyship? Why, like, what are the things that white people need to look at within themselves and within their communities, and really take a critical eye to. I struggle with how to fully review this because I think what Emma says in here is basically that allyship is sort of not possible, or not the way that we're all doing it or trying to do it. So she does, and that's something that I do appreciate, is, you know, going through a lot of what it doesn't mean, and parts of our lives that we need to look at that we don't even think that we need to look at. And then giving some, what she calls post activism, not even like, here's what you do kind of thing. It's more of just, this is how we can live. But that the whole idea of race itself is discriminatory. Yeah, it goes into depth and goes to parts of the anti-racism scholarship that I hadn't read this perspective before. And so I would really encourage everyone to read this. It's a very short book. And I got it from my library. I think I did read and listen to some of it, and then my hoopla took my my hold back. So I ended up just reading it, but it's very powerful, and that's kind of my stumbling over words review of that one, but I highly recommend it. I did give it 5 stars. Then I also read Milkman by Anna Burns. This was for the Irish Readathon prompt of reading a book that has won an award before. This won the Man Booker Prize in 2018. This was interesting because there are no names in the book. People are referred to as middle sister, first little sister, third brother-in-law. That at first I found a little bit jarring, but then sort of made sense to me. And I was listening to it. And when I got towards the end, there were some names being used. And I had to stop and get my physical copy and make sure I was hearing it correctly. So this is about middle sister. She, first of all, had my heart when they said she reads while walking. And she has a relationship with a guy that she calls almost boyfriend, because they haven't like declared themselves to be boyfriend girlfriend, but they've been together for a while, together but not together, and shows her relationship with her different siblings. She has a number of older brothers and sisters, then has some little sisters, and there's all different kinds of connections, and where one of her older brothers has died, one of them is not allowed back in the town anymore, like a sister is not allowed back in the town, all because of the conflicts that are going around and the bombings by the IRA and who's on what side. And so she has the almost boyfriend, and then she also catches the eye of Milkman, who is described as like a paramilitary person, and kind of her reaction to that, and how the story gets back to her family. There's a lot of like how the community works and how people find out about stuff and people assume things and people respond to you by what they've heard, and it's all assumptions and whether it's true or not. And then it's also the idea that you're being watched by people, by the government. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. And it took me a minute to get used to the middle sister, little sister, third brother-in-law kind of thing. But like I said, once it started throwing in a couple of names towards the end, I was like, wait a minute, what? What are we doing? Is this the same novel? So you get used to it pretty quickly. The audiobook was really good. Really good book. It's sat on my shelves for so many years, and I'm glad that I finally got to it. Okay, I also read, which this was not on my intentional living book stack, which my goal is to read those this year, but I've only read one. However, I did read a book that was kind of a bonus book for my intentional living book stack. It was called Decluttering at the Speed of Light by Dana K. White. I listened to this on Hoopla. It was recommended to me by someone from our book club. And it was just helpful to get me going with packing and decluttering. And yeah, that was a messy wrap up. Sorry about that. There was just a lot. And this is why I probably work better with mid-month wrap-ups and end-of-the-month wrap-ups, like 2 weeks at a time, because I forget. And I do take notes on some, but yeah, with brain fog on a regular basis, I need to update you all sooner so that I can remember more. Anyway, that is all I have for you today. I hope you are doing well. Let me know in the comments if you read any great books in March. Have a great day, and I will see you very soon. Bye.